Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. Uh, it's a big day. Tomorrow's the inauguration. I know everybody's excited, but we still have time to talk about foraging and herbal medicine. And it being the dead of winter and absolutely bitterly cold, the coldest weather we've had all winter, this is the time of year to learn, to read, to listen to podcasts, to learn about the plants that you'll have an opportunity to go out and harvest in the spring. It's really the best way, one of the best ways to use your time when you're stuck inside is to learn, read a variety of books. I'm reading books by a couple of saints right now, in addition to my normal herbal books, and I'm working on writing 3 books at once and weaving a really cool basket. I can't wait to show that to y'all. So, good inside, sitting by the fireside type of projects. But the first one I'm going to talk about today, our first plant's going to come from my spring foraging cookbook. And it's actually one, depending on where you live, you may still be able to harvest it now. You see, the prickly pear cactus will form fruits. And the fruits, again, depending on where you are and if it grows in your area, may still be on the plant and perfectly ripe right now. I usually gather them in the fall, but I have passed, I've been off the mountain a lot this winter, down in the central part of the state, and I past several stands of big prickly pear cactus with the fruit still on them. Now, in the spring, we more harvest the pads, and I really love prickly pear. We have 2 that grow in my region, although neither one of them do particularly well up at my elevation. It's a little too cold, but it's abundant. It was a major food plant for the various tribes that lived in the southeast, and of course very popular in Mexican cooking and South American cooking. Some places it's considered invasive, other places it's not. In a lot, especially of the southeast going toward the coast, you'll see large stands of prickly pear cactus. And those were grown as food. That was a food crop for people that used to have homes there. You may, depending on where you are, you may see a few small palmettos or some big yuccas. I mean, people knew how to use those plants back then. Of course, most people have pretty much forgotten about that now. And, I've covered the fruit before. Probably cover it again and when I do my foraging book for fall. But if you want to look up how I process the fruit, that's in some of the older episodes from probably about a year and a half ago. So if you want to look for that, I think the Latin name is opuntia. I have a little trouble pronouncing it because, see, the pads in when I was growing up were called tunas, and I think they still are in a lot of like Mexican tiendas. So when I originally read the word, I thought it said optunia, but it's actually opuntia. But we just call it prickly pear, but then there's a related one called Indian fig, which is much smaller, and it's very, very common in the Sandhills region. And it's called Indian figs because the fruits that look like, oh, I don't know, almost like a passion fruit or a big kiwi or something on a prickly pear cactus. On the Indian fig, it grows lower to the ground. It has beautiful flowers. They both do, by the way. But it grows like a little purple fig. So in the springtime, and you could gather this in the winter. They may be a little tougher. You know, you want to usually get like the new growth, but if it was a survival food, we're going to gather the pads of the prickly pear, or you could use the Indian fig. They're both in the same family. They're both absolutely delicious, but of course they are cactus. And cactus has a lot of spines. Do not try to harvest these barehanded. You can remove the spines by peeling, in which case you're probably going to get a lot in your skin because it's really hard to get them all off. Easiest thing to do is take a plumber's torch, just a little, propane torch, or if you have a gas stove, you can hold the pads or the fruit over the flames of the burner with a pair of tongs and burn the spines off. That really is the best way to do it. So when I harvest cactus, I usually wear heavy gloves, but definitely a heavy towel, and that way I can kind of wrap my hand with it. And even then, try not to touch it a whole lot because those spines can get through about anything. I take a 5-gallon bucket and a knife. I hold it under the fruit or the pad, and I just cut it off into the bucket. I will not touch those again until I get home. Then I'm going to use a pair of tongs. Of course, you could use chopsticks. You could use whatever works for you. Pick it up, burn the spines off, then peel it. The fruit's really pretty nice. Got a lot of seeds in it. You do have to process those seeds out, but you can make a nice sherbet. They really have a kiwi type of a texture and somewhat of flavor. Usually beautiful deep purple, and they make an excellent wine actually. But the pads are really popular in Mexican cooking. That's really where I, learned most about how to use it. Plenty of Mexican folks in North Carolina, without a doubt. Millions, probably. Well, I have looked at the numbers per capita. We have one of the largest Mexican populations of any state in the nation. I believe we're in the top 5. It's a lot. It's a lot, and so of course I've gotten to enjoy a lot of really great Mexican food, and they're usually called nopales, or you may still see the word tunas. I don't know why they got that name. They're certainly not a fish, but you burn those spines off, you peel it, and then they can be eaten like okra. They have that nice mucilaginous quality, or grilled and added to tacos, fajitas, etc. I think that's just fantastic. That is my favorite way to do it. And, a lot of times I'll do fajitas and such on the grill. And so I can just burn the spines off right on the charcoal grill or over a campfire and use them that way. And I gave my instructions on fajitas about, 2 shows back under Orpine. So that, there's no sense in running over that same ground again. I would really advise tossing them into most any recipe for your favorite Mexican dish. I mean, you could go full vegetarian with it, combining these with some cheese. It's really traditional, actually. Or they would just work great with meat, fish, chicken, you name it. Gator, turtle, anything like that. I mean, they're a mild flavor, but they're good, and they don't overpower anything. Some people like to boil and drain them before cooking them in a pan. Since I usually grill them, I usually just skip that step. They're kind of thick, they're meaty. It's up to you. It's a texture thing. Regardless, just cook until soft, cut and slice into bite-sized pieces. I always cook them with tomatoes, peppers, and onions. It's just a classic flavor combination. I think it's absolutely fantastic. A little garlic's nice with that, of course. As hot a pepper as you like. Anything you want to add to it. There's no wrong way to do this. And really, when I said they could be just served vegetarian style with some of that with cojita cheese. That's like one of the few vegetarian recipes or dishes that I would actually buy in a restaurant and be satisfied with. I mean, they really are quite kind of don't know if meaty in texture is the word, but just very satisfying. And, you know, obviously I would rather have it with some meat, but I wouldn't get too upset. Just, with anything like that, really fresh corn tortillas make all the difference when it comes to a taco. Of course, you can use the same vegetable combination with scrambled eggs. Absolutely. Cactus and eggs, fantastic. With some cheese and hot sauce. Really one of my favorite breakfasts. You could just eat it plain or to make a breakfast burrito. Cooked nopales make an excellent addition to a salad, and I find this especially true if you have some smoked pork or grilled chicken. I do love to make, we have in North Carolina traditional of a barbecue salad, usually seen more like in the Lexington, Concord area. It's kind of center of the state. They were big industrial towns, a lot of furniture industry and textiles, especially in Concord, up that way. And unlike in the eastern part of the state where people will cook whole hogs over live hardwood coals for 24 hours, 20 minimum, right? And then you have everything's chopped up together and served. When you get to the center of the state, they usually use pork shoulders. That's more convenient. They cook in about 12 hours, usually brick pits, indoors as opposed to an open pit outdoors. And the area is just really famous for its excellent hardwood. It's cooked over hickory and oak usually, mostly hickory, just chopped. There's no such thing as pulled pork in North Carolina. I hate to break that to you. It's just a marketing term. You cook the meat till it's basically falling apart, and you chop it up with a cleaver. And you either serve it on a dish with some coleslaw and refried beans and some hush puppies or cornbread, or you put it on a sandwich. Eastern part of the state has a vinegar-based sauce with no tomato product in it whatsoever and no sugar, ever. Again, that's a myth that the Food Network spread, that we put ketchup and sugar and everything. No. Raleigh and going west, so center of the state and going west, yes, they start putting in sugar and ketchup. I'm not really fond of that, so when I go to a good traditional barbecue joint, there are only a few of them left, I often do get the barbecue salad, which is just a tossed salad, just lettuce, carrots, onions, tomato, cucumber, that kind of thing, with a big pile of barbecue on top of it and a vinaigrette dressing. And it can just be vinegar barbecue sauce. It's actually really good. A lot of people find it strange, but it's actually really good. So I like to use Cactus in that because the smoked pork goes excellent, just perfect, with the grilled Cactus pads that are just, sliced thin, and you just eat it right along with it. And I might do char a couple of cherry tomatoes or a couple of tomatillos and add to it. It's just whatever you want to do. It's a mix of flavors. You definitely add some cheese to it. Really, feta is really good. Feta and Cactus combine really, really well. Let's see. Of course, good in soups. Yeah, you can actually do them really, really good in soups. Do some like Mexican style soups and top them with some tortilla chips if you want. Excellent, winter dish if you happen to have some of these still around. Additionally, I'm going to recommend one more ingredient that might freak you out. Okay. It's really traditional. This would have been really common. My grandparents still ate it. Would have been really common in our grandparents' generation before that. And it's brains. Now, every culture on every country on the face of the earth, before food became modern and processed and getting everything from the fast food joints or in a can, ate brains. And pork brains or calf brains would be most common. Now, pork brains are still sold in cans in rural grocery stores in certain parts of North Carolina. I cannot attest to where you live. You may be able to get pork brains or calf brains from your butcher. The texture of brains is really much like scrambled eggs. Okay, they're soft and creamy because, of course, the brain is mostly fat. And the combination of brains with soft cooked nopales, tomatoes, peppers, and onions really actually makes them barely distinguishable from eggs. Now, I'm not going to suggest that you cook up a pan of brains and nopales and try to trick somebody into thinking they're scrambled eggs, but most people, unless you told them what they were, would bite into it and say, wow, this is delicious, because they really are. Mild in flavor, very rich, great deal of nutrition. One of the most nutritious foods you can eat. And you can, and of course, they also combine very well with scrambled eggs. That's the traditional way of eating them, as far as I know, in the South, is scrambled eggs and brains with some grits. And yeah, it's actually quite good. But of course, if you throw enough hot sauce and cheese on there, like I said, mischievous grin implied, most people wouldn't even know what they are. So, another great one, and mostly forgotten ingredient, is tripe. Tripe is the stomach of the cow. It's difficult to prepare at home, but you can buy it in most stores. You should be able to request it from your butcher. Um, there's again nothing wrong with it. It's clean. It's white. It's actually really nice, and it makes really good soups. And there's some traditional tripe soups in Mexico, and not at all hard to prepare. You just want to simmer them for a long time in a nice spicy soup until it's good and tender. Now, all right, and tripe does like strong flavors, so I'd put in a lot of peppers and onions and garlic and some nopales and tomatoes and just, a lot of good hot sauce and cumin and everything I might want to put in there. And while I don't recommend overindulgence, tripe soups have traditionally been considered a hangover cure in every European country and are still popular in many places of Mexico for that reason. Um, so maybe be a little adventurous. The nopales are such a mild flavor, and they combine so well with other things. Maybe you can try some of those meats that our grandparents loved that I actually still enjoy that you've been a little afraid to try. And as far as like the tripe soups from Mexico, Rick Bayless's first cookbook, I think it was Traditional Mexican Cooking, has a great recipe. I'm sure it's on his site. I find him kind of annoying, but he's one heck of a cook and an expert on traditional Mexican foods. And of course, there are many Mexican cooks that are experts on traditional Mexican foods as well. If you have a favorite one, and they have a website, and you want to send me a recipe, I'd love it. I really do enjoy it. Patty's Mexican Table. There's another one. Oh, what's her name? She's out in L.A. There's several Mexican cooking programs that I enjoy when I can catch them on TV, and there's several sites I go when I'm researching a new recipe that I want to try. But I can absolutely attest to Bayless's first cookbook. It's a masterpiece. I have been cooking out of it for years, and really have impressed some Mexican friends and dates with like food like their grandmother made. And they're like, "How the heck do you know how to cook this?" I'm like, "Well, I got to admit, it's some guy from Chicago that wrote this cookbook, and it's really amazing." And they flip through it, and they're like, "Wow, I can't believe some guy from Chicago wrote this book." So there's a recommendation. Now, I have another recommendation. As I've mentioned several times over the last few months, I've been using a product called Magic Mind. It's an herbal product. They now have two. There's one that includes some green tea and caffeine, and there's one that includes some amino acids and herbs to help you sleep. And really very nice. The company was made to increase mental clarity and focus. So that's what the original Magic Mind was made for. But of course, you can't be at your best, you can't focus without a good night's sleep. So the new project, Magic Mind Sleep, they sent me a sample of it, and I really do like it. It's got some good herbs in it. It's got some ashwagandha. It's got some kava kava. Yeah, I love kava kava. It's got a little chamomile. Chamomile's nice and relaxing. It's got a few amino acids. It's got GABA, 5-HTP, L-theanine. It's got valerian, of course, one of our very best sedative herbs. Passion flower, lemon balm. We've talked about all those for relaxation, muscle relaxation, sleep, etc. Lavender. It's got magnesium. Of course, magnesium helps with muscle cramping and such as that. And it's actually quite tasty. I'm not exactly sure how I would describe the taste. It's got a little bit of chamomile flavor, a little bit of plum and monk fruit, I think they listed on the package. Really nice. Now, as you know, I have trouble sleeping. That's always been one of my biggest issues. So whenever there's a good product like this that helps me to sleep, I'm of course very interested in it, and I've been using it for about a week or so. And yeah, it's actually very effective and very nice. It doesn't have any melatonin in it, which I don't mind melatonin. I take melatonin on, every now and then, but it's a good one. And they recommend that you take that at night before bed, and then in the morning take the Magic Mind Mental Performance Shot. Well, that also has some excellent ingredients. It has vitamins like C and D3, B2, B3, B12, lion's mane mushroom. Really good for the brain, really good for the immune system as well. It's got bacopa and ashwagandha, which are both a little bit relaxing. It's got L-theanine. It's got turmeric, great for the immune system. For energy, though, it gives you rhodiola and cordyceps, which are adaptogenic herbs, and a little matcha, a little green tea for a little bit of caffeine. And yeah, it's really nice. It does help with focus and mental clarity, but it doesn't make you jittery like coffee. They now have this concept, they're calling it mental wealth. Okay? They're saying mental wealth is about investing in habits that can build your resilience to future challenges, like creating a mental savings account that you can draw from when time gets tough. Well, good night's sleep, some good supportive herbs really do give you an advantage in that regard. But of course, they have their 5-pillar sleep diet, exercise, stress management, and exogenous compounds. Those exogenous compounds being what we've been discussing. It's a good quality product. They say if you use the morning one and then the evening one, you get 24 hours of improved mental performance and clarity. I've only been using the one for sleep for about a week, but yeah, it is nice. I'm getting a better night's sleep. And these are also all immune supportive products, which of course is very important this time of year with all the viruses going around and such as that. Now, here's the cool thing. They've just rolled out the new sleep product, and they're offering my listeners a really great discount. If you get one of each, a bundle, with the mental focus and the sleep shots, you can get them 45% off. And that's just a really fantastic deal for a really good quality product. I'm very impressed with the company. The quality of their ingredients, the quality of their product really is just top notch. Great guarantees on the product. They even give 5 cents per bottle to mental health charities that help homeless folks. So that's really good. They got a lot of good people on the staff, a lot of endorsements from doctors. And yeah, I just really like it. So take advantage of this if you can. They will ship. They ship to over 65 countries, and they have a 100% refund, no questions asked guarantee for up to 100 days after buying it. So that's really pretty amazing. Okay, you may be able to find it in some stores, but this bundled package of both the mental performance shot and the sleep shot. And when I say shot, they're just these little 2-ounce bottles, so that's why they're called shots. 45% off for your first order. So that is just great. The code is magicmind.com/JCarroll, JAN. So this is January promotion for Judson Carroll. Again, it's JCarrollJAN. All right, now let's get on to our medicinal herb of the week. And this comes from the Medicinal Trees and Shrubs book. Medicinal trees and shrubs of the American South. Again, these grow most everywhere. And the one we're going to talk about today is Barberry, Berberis. And when I say this grows everywhere, well, our native Oregon grape grows pretty much all over the country, well up into Canada. It's just everywhere, right? But just about everywhere along with it and everywhere else, you're going to find Japanese barberry or one of the other Asian barberries. They're just very popular in landscaping plants. So you may find these in a park, you may find them in a parking lot. Make sure you're in a clean place. But they do bear fruit, these berries. They're also everywhere because birds spread them. Birds eat the berries, poop out the seeds, and they drop them everywhere. I don't think They've grown everywhere I've ever lived, and I've lived in 5 states. I've lived in several different regions and traveled, and I can always spot Oregon grape or a barberry, and that's a good thing because they're really, really useful medicinal plants. There are 44 varieties of barberry that have documented use in herbal medicine, so I am not going to try to read them all to you. There's only one native to my region, and that's Berberis canadensis, American barberry. But of course, several have been naturalized. Leatherleaf mahonia, Japanese barberry, and European barberry or common barberry, and of course, Oregon grapes just everywhere. The barberries and mahonias are closely related. The shrubs contain berberine. Now, we've talked about berberine when talking about golden seal and cactus and different plants. It's strongly antiseptic, antifungal, and antiviral. Being able to identify these herbs, which are big bushes, they're really hard to miss, and they're thorny and prickly. I mean, they're like really hard not to know what they are. They could literally save your life in an emergency situation if you were wounded. You can use the berberine from the root to disinfect a wound. They're also excellent for liver and digestion. And they've been documented throughout history in herbal medicine. Going back to Dioscorides, he had a native one there called oxycantha. And he said it was like a wild pear tree, but smaller and very prickly. That it is very prickly. He said, taken in a drink or eaten, the fruit stops outflows and the flows of women. In other words, it's an astringent, so that would help with excessive menstrual bleeding or diarrhea. The root bruised and applied draws out splinters and thorns. Also very, very useful, especially if you're in the woods and you get a splinter and you can't get the thing out. It can get infected or just really cause you a lot of pain. I had one in my thumb a couple of weeks ago. I didn't see it at first, and it got in so deep I had to end up digging it out with a needle. I hate splinters, and being a woodworker, I get a bunch of them. Going up a few, 1,000 years or so, we get to Culpeper in 1600. He says, this shrub is so well known by every boy or girl that hath but attained the age of 7 years old that it needs no description. Well, why is that? Well, it's so thorny. You would have bumped into one if you were a kid playing in the countryside or anywhere. You would have very quickly been able to identify any of the Berberis or Mahonia family. He said, the inner rind of the barberry tree boiled in white wine and a quarter of a pint drank each morning is an excellent remedy to cleanse the body of choleric humors and free it from such diseases as choler causes, such as scabs, itch, tetters, ringworms, yellow jaundice, and boils, etc. It has a very strong effect on the liver, and a lot of skin issues are associated with liver issues, especially jaundice, but also psoriasis and eczema and such as that. He said it is excellent for hot agues, its fevers, burnings, scaldings, heat of the blood, heat of the liver, bloody flux, its diarrhea. For the berries are just as good as the bark and more pleasing. They get a man a good stomach to his victuals by strengthening the attractive faculty. What that means is the bitter fruit, and they are quite bitter. But they're not unpleasant. I snack on a few berries. I know people that make jellies and wines out of them. I mean, they're really not anything to worry about. I mean, it's not like they're so bitter you won't be able to eat them like an unripe persimmon. You actually kind of get used to them. And sometimes they would serve like that jelly alongside a fatty piece of meat. Like we do cranberry sauce with turkey or duck or lingonberries or anything you use along those lines. And it stimulates digestion. It stimulates the gastric juices flowing. It actually tonifies the stomach if you have an issue with that, and it increases the appetite. So it will help with really a lot of different digestive issues, but also help if you're recovering from sickness and you just don't have an appetite. He said the hair washed with the lye made of the ashes of the tree and water will make it turn yellow. Yes, they were actually dyeing their hair in the 1600s. That was not uncommon at all. In fact, going back to ancient Roman times, that was written out extensively. Really looked down upon by the Romans to dye one's hair, make yourself look younger. But the Celtic warriors wore their hair long and flowing, and their beards long, and they would dye them yellow to match their horses' tails. Apparently, they had white horses with yellow manes and tails, and it made for a very intimidating, striking figure coming toward you at full gallop with the hair flowing with the mane and the sword out. You can imagine that might be a little intimidating. He said the fruit and rind of the shrub, the flowers of broom and heath, cleanse the body by sympathy as the flowers, leaves, and bark of the peach do by antipathy, because they are under Mars and that under Venus. Don't ask me. I never have understood all his astrological stuff. I think he only understood all his astrological stuff. He was a very odd guy. He was always ranting about Catholics being superstitious, and then he would include all this astrological folklore and, mess like that. Miss Grieve wrote, 1930s, in many parts of Europe, farmers have asserted that wheat planted within 300 or 400 yards of the barberry bush become infected with rust or mildew, but this belief has not been substantiated. And so, in other words, they started trying to eradicate it around wheat. Professor Henslow writes, it was thought by farmers in the middle of the last century that barberry blighted wheat if it grew near the hedge. Botanists then ridiculed the idea, but in a sense the farmers were right. What they observed was that if a barberry bush grew, say at the corner of a wheat field, the leaves of the wheat became rusty, i.e. they were streaked with a red color when close to the bush, and that this red rust extended steadily across the field until the whole was rusted. The interpretation was at that time unknown. A fungus attacks the leaves of the barberry, making orange-colored spots. I've seen that before. And it throws off minute spores, which do attack the wheat. So I guess there was some truth to it. But getting back to the medicinal use of the plant, barberry the barberry used to be cultivated for the sake of the fruit, which was pickled and used for garnishing dishes. Interesting. I have not thought about pickling it. But then again, in a lot of the old English cookbooks, they would pickle with brandy. They weren't necessarily pickling all the time with vinegar. And so you might have a sweet pickle made with brandy and sugar, and that would be called a pickle. And then you might have a sour pickle that was fermented or made with vinegar, and that would be called a pickle. And sometimes even certain condiments were known as pickles because the word condiment actually derives from, I believe, Old English or Latin for pickled. So literally anything that was being served along with your food, from mustard to a pickled cucumber to cranberry sauce to brandied fruit, might be called pickles. So you never knew what you were going to get at an English table, but I'm sure it was all quite good. Those are all actually among some of my favorite foods. She said, Miss Grieve again, she said the ripe berries can be made into an agreeable, refreshing jelly by boiling them with an equal weight of fine sugar to a proper consistency and then straining it. They have their own pectin, so they really do make a nice jelly. They were formerly used as a sweetmeat and in sugar plums or comfites, so they made candies out of them. Sugar plums, if you ever had what do they call it, Jerusalem almonds or something, there's those hard candy-coated almonds, that's actually a sugar plum. Very rarely, if ever, were there actually plums in sugar plum. Plums were actually a word used for candy. I know, it gets really confusing when we get into those old culinary terms. The roots boiled in lye would dye wool yellow, and in Poland they dye leather a beautiful yellow color from the bark of the root. The inner bark of the stems will also dye linen of a fine yellow with the assistance of alum. Again, that's the berberin. It has a yellow pigment. Provincially, the plant is termed Piper Ridge bush, from Pepion or pip, and rouge red as description of the scarlet juiceless fruit. And the Oregon grape has much more juice than the barberry, by the way. Berberis is the Arabic name of the fruit, signifying a shell, and many authors believe that the name is derived from this word because the leaves are glossy, like the inside of an oyster shell. Yeah. Among the Italians, barberry bears the name of holy thorn because it is thought to have formed part of the crown of thorns made for our Savior. I think most historians believe that was actually hawthorn, but you never know. Both are very thorny. Parts use stem bark, root bark. The stem bark is collected by shaving and is dried, spread out in trays in the sun or on shelves of a well-ventilated greenhouse or in an airy attic or loft, warmed either by the sun or by the artificial heat of the stove, the doors and windows being left open by day to ensure a warm current of air. I use my attic as an herb dryer, by the way. It works perfectly for that purpose. The bark may also be strung on threads and hung across the room. When dried, the pieces of the bark are in small irregular portions, about 2 inches long and a half-inch wide, and of a dark yellowish gray color externally, marked with a shallow longitudinal furrows. It frequently bears the minute black fruits of lichen. Lichen's a fungi. The bark is dark yellowish brown on the inner surface. And anyway, the bark has a slight odor and a bitter taste, and colors the saliva yellow when chewed. The bark root is grayish brown externally. These aren't really hard to identify. I'm just going to skip forward. The chief constituent of barberry bark is berberine, a yellow crystalline bitter alkaloid, that one of the few that occurs in plants belonging to several different natural orders. Other constituents are oxycanthine, barberamine, and other alkaloidal matter, a little tannin, a little wax, a little resin, a little fat, albumin, gum, and starch. Medicinal uses and actions: tonic, purgative, and antiseptic. It is used in the form of a liquid extract given as a decoction, that's just a strong tea made from the bark, or as an infusion or tincture being made with alcohol. But generally, a salt of the alkaloid berberine is preferred. That was actually used in official medicine. You would get that from a pharmacist. Used as a bitter stomach tonic, it provides an excellent remedy for dyspepsia and functional derangement of the liver, regulating the digestive powers, and if given in a larger dose, acting as a mild purgative and removing constipation. It is used in all cases of jaundice, general debility, and biliousness, and for diarrhea. It possesses febrifuge or fever lowering properties and is used as a remedy for intermittent fevers. It also forms an excellent gargle for a sore mouth. A good lotion for application to cutaneous eruptions, skin issues, has been made from it. The berries contain citric and malic acids, possess an astringent and antiscorbutic properties, so it's got vitamin C. It'll help against scurvy. They are useful in inflammatory fevers, especially typhus, also in bilious disorders and scurvy, and in the form of a jelly are very refreshing in irritable sore throat, for which also a syrup of barberries made with water proves an excellent astringent gargle. The Egyptians are said still to employ a diluted juice of the berries in pestilential fever, and Simon Pauli relates that he was cured of a malignant fever by drinking an infusion of the berries sweetened with sugar and the syrup of roses. An Irish herbal tells us the inner bark, which is of a deep yellow color, is good for jaundice, and the fruit relieves diarrhea. Brother Aloysius wrote, the inner rind of the stem and root is very good for liver, spleen disorders, and dropsy, and is a good laxative. The root is also used for jaundice. The leaves are recommended for scurvy or dropsy. The berries can be preserved. A refreshing drink, which is very useful for fever, can also be made from them. A Russian herbal tells us that a manuscript from the 16th century found in this, I can't pronounce that, region of Russia, refers to barberry's ability to cure a disease that prevented women from becoming pregnant. It was believed that the Princess Xenia of Sakov, used an extract made with barberry leaves to enable her to conceive an heir. In books documenting Russia's colonization of the East, references have been made to barberry's widespread growth in Siberia. Russian herbalists use a decoction for relieving symptoms of colitis as well as for treating bladder and urinary tract infections. It is considered a very helpful remedy for overcoming morphine addiction. As a diaphoretic, a barberry root decoction is used to treat an enlarged spleen as a result of malaria. A decoction of the berries improves the circulation of the blood. It tends to dilate the blood vessels and lower blood pressure and increase blood coagulation. An infusion of barberry leaves promotes uterine contractions, which helps limit menstrual bleeding. Used externally, a barberry decoction is used to treat eczema and neurodermatitis. The Lumbee Indians also used barberry. They called it yellow root, which is fairly, makes sense, right? But there's also another plant, I think it's Xanthothyllum, which is more commonly called yellow root. So we want to make sure we know which plant we're dealing with. I'm not going to try to pronounce it in the Lumbee traditional language. It's Catawban language. I believe it's something like weaya, something like that. Weaya. I don't know. A medicine of the root in Lumbee traditional language. Okay. The Lumbee healer would often a Lumbee healer would often boil the stems and roots into a tea to treat an ulcerated stomach and cankers. A piece of the green dried root was chewed by some Lumbee to relieve discomforts of the stomach, and the virtue was thought to lie in the bitterness. Barberry is used in the Thomsonian system of medicine. It said barberry bark is intensely bitter stimulant used chiefly for torpid conditions of the liver and flaccid conditions of the stomach, so inflamed liver and weak stomach. It is a pronounced tonic and is adapted only to chronic cases. In jaundice, accompanied by loss of strength and feebled appetite, it is valuable. It is much used in malarial diseases combined with other agents. Resources of Southern Fields and Forests talks a good deal about it. They had identified berberine by this point, and it was being very much used by doctors and pharmacists. Let's see, it says, from the berries, a syrup is obtained which is adapted to putrid fevers, would help with fevers, and those of a low type. A cooling drink is made with them and given in similar cases. The root boiled in lye imparts the yellow color to wool. I observed. Since the English barberry has attracted much attention, its fruit is edible, and much discussion has been excited whether or not it produces smut in wheat and corn. So we've already covered that. And he said that Dr. Wood advises that the active principle of berberine be examined for its antiperiodic properties, so it could help with excessive menstrual bleeding. King's American Dispensatory of 1898 describes the ones, mostly the European that was brought here, but also that we had a native. Under actions, medicinal uses, and dosage, Berberis vulgaris, a native of Europe, now quite common in this country and for many years has been in domestic use as a medication. A tea made from the bark is taken during the spring months as a blood purifier. A strong decoction is employed as an application to the sores, which sometimes affect children's lips, and in certain conditions of the system demanding tonic treatment. The infusion is a favorable remedy. The fluid extract is usually administered. It is readily prepared by those having proper facilities and can be easily made from the bark. It is more satisfactory in its action than the alkaloid berberine. Berberis is a tonic and laxative, formerly used extensively by practitioners in the New England states, in all cases where tonics are indicated. Also in jaundice, chronic diarrhea, and dysentery, the berries form an agreeable, aciduous draught, so a sour drink, in other words. Useful as a refrigerant in fevers, also beneficial in dysentery, cholera, diarrhea. The bark is bitter and astringent and has been used with advantage as a tonic. The bark of the root is the most active. A spoonful of the powder will act as a purgative. A decoction of the bark or berries has been found of service as a wash for sore mouth and in chronic ophthalmia. It is of value in jaundice where there is no obstruction of the bile ducts, and in doses short of purgative stimulates the duodenal function, relieving intestinal dyspepsia. Small doses are also palliative in renal calculi and soreness, burning, and other unpleasant sensations of the urinary tract. They go on and talk about all the related species, the Berberis canadensis, and all those that grow around here. Let's see, Jethro Kloss said specifically of wild Oregon grape, Berberis aquifolium, useful in the liver and kidney troubles, rheumatism, constipation, leukorrhea, and uterine diseases. It is a good blood purifier and useful in scrofulous and chronic skin diseases such as psoriasis and eczema. The medicinal uses of this plant are nearly identical to Berberis vulgaris. Getting up to modern times, Botany Today says medicinally the yellow berberine alkaloid acts as a potent bitter stimulant, antiseptic, and antibacterial. As a bitter substance, berberine is stimulating to the digestive tract, promoting gastric activity, bile production, liver cleansing, and acting as a laxative. By stimulating liver function, it is considered a blood purifier. Useful for the venereal diseases of syphilis and gonorrhea, as well as premenstrual syndrome. It calms a person by facilitating liver function. Chewing the leaves may help with acne. Again, this is a result of increased liver function. Berberine is so incredibly bitter that it stimulates the entire body and not just the digestive system. It opens up the blood vessels and is a vasodilator and lowers blood pressure. Increased blood flow can stimulate involuntary muscles, so the Flathead Indians used berberine to stimulate delivery of the placenta after childbirth. Berberine is not a narcotic alkaloid. but is reported to have a Novocaine-like effect if you chew the root prior to dental work. As an antiseptic, berberine has been used internally and externally. Externally as a treatment for cuts and wounds. The wounds are cleansed, crushed, and applied to open injuries. Berberine is also useful to lower fevers and inflammation. Mixing barberries with licorice somehow negates the effect of berberine. So that's the same thing licorice does with gentian. So it must be a very similar action there. Any of the berberis species are excellent substitutes for the overharvested and now endangered golden seal. Absolutely. And there's one, Colorado's Freeman barberry. It has a compound methohydrocarpine, or MHC, and it's been proven useful against antibiotic resistance bacteria. MHC prevents bacteria from pumping antibiotics, including berberine, out of the cells. And finally, Prance for a Future says of the Allegheny barberry, berberine, universally present in the ribosomes of berberis species, has marked antibacterial effects. Since it is not appreciably absorbed by the body, it is used orally in the treatment of various enteric infections, especially bacterial dysentery. It should not be used with licorice, glycyrrhiza, because it nullifies the effects of berberine. Berberine has also shown anti-tumor activity. A tea made for the roots is used in the treatment of fevers and diarrhea. So, as promised, this is absolutely one of the most useful wild herbs that I know of. Absolutely fantastic, easy to identify, very hardy. There's tons of it. There's absolutely tons of it. And yeah, it's one of those top 5 herbs that I think you should learn to use. So y'all have a great week. Oh, and don't forget, you can get 45% off the Magic Mind bundle using the code magicmind.com/JCarroll, JAN. So definitely take advantage of that if you're interested. All right, have a good one.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.